On Christmas Eve, 1990, the last of my grandparents died. And it just happened to be a time when all of my immediate family was together for, it was basically a Christmas reunion. So all three of my siblings were there with me. My parents, who, praise God, both are still living. And all of my nephews and nieces at the time. There are a few more since then. But then we were all together at the table on Christmas Eve when we got the phone call that my grandfather Steele had passed away. And I was actually quite surprised at my own reaction to this. It started quite a bit of self-reflection. The next morning, I woke up with this really keen sense that I was not just a day older, but that I was a generation older. Because he was now gone. My parents were the oldest generation. My two sisters, my brother, and I were the middle generation, and then there was the new crop coming along. And so I began 2 diaries on Christmas Day, 1990. One was just a normal diary, recording things that happened if I wanted to. And the other was a dream diary. Now, I didn't try too hard to analyze it, nor did I even go to a professional to help analyze it. I just wanted to get it down. But, after a while, it started to show some patterns, And one of the patterns which emerged, there were certain characters who I started to notice would keep coming back in some of these dreams. But one of the patterns I noticed in my dream diary was that a lot of my dreams, I don't know if it's the same way with you, but a lot of my dreams, anyway, were about journeys. There were train rides, airplane rides, walks. There were a lot of trips down paths and climbing mountains. But it seemed that, at least for me, the journey was a major theme of my inner life, of my dreaming. It is, but that made me conscious of it in a way I hadn't been before. The journey is a big thing for a lot of us. Frederick Chopin, whose music Alec is playing for us today. Frederick Chopin went on a journey when he was 20 years of age, just about ready to finish up his studies as a grown-up child prodigy in composition and piano. Just about ready to finish his studies at the Warsaw Conservatory. He, upon completing those studies, left for Paris via Austria. And it was while he was on this journey, his father was French, on his way to Paris, he was about a month into the journey when the uprising in Poland, mid-19th century uprising against the dominance of the Russian Empire happened. It was squashed almost immediately. And Chopin felt exiled and never returned to his homeland from that time on. And he entered into his diary these words, "Oh God, you are there, and yet you do not take vengeance." He was puzzled. Much of his music, if it's not overtly patriotic or nationalistic, is full of unrequited longing, and these things he'll do in his harmonies where you think he's coming to settle on a chord somewhere in the melody, maybe at the end at a cadence point, and yet he has this sort of suspended note that doesn't quite fit there. And it's going to resolve sooner or later, but it just twists your heart a little extra. And his music is full of that longing. When he wrote his first ballade, he was kind of inventing a new instrumental form. The ballad had been a part of storytelling and poetry for a long time. And in the medieval period, people would sing ballads, but as a strictly instrumental form of music, Chopin was a pioneer. But he wrote these ballades, which, though they don't describe a specific story, they still have that sense of story. There's a narrative quality which has a beginning and a middle and an end, and there's conflict. And you hope to God about halfway through that it will get resolved, but you don't really know till the last note which way it's going to go. The conflict, there's lengthy developments of it feels like a quest or like longing for resolution. And any of us as listeners, we We don't end up in the same place we started when we listen to this music. Two of art's major themes are indeed longing and the journey. Visual arts, the dramatic arts, performing arts, it's all there. The journey and longing, two of the major themes. In fact, actually, probably longing and the journey are probably the same theme, aren't they? Because no pilgrimage begins without some sort of desire driving it. I have a very good friend who's going to be taking a journey all the way to Toronto this week and this coming weekend, all the way to Toronto to meet a potential soulmate. Okay? There's desire, there's longing, and there's the journey. All of our longings and the trips that we make to satisfy them are shadows of the biggest quest, which is our implanted longing for the presence and companionship of God. I think St. Augustine had it totally right. He said that our hearts, all of us, it's just a part of being human. Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in Him. And there is a rest we can have now, and then there is an ultimate rest, which is the ultimate promise. Jacob, in our first lesson today, is restless. Jacob is very restless. He is running away from home, and specifically the anger of his older brother, who Jacob, frankly, had kind of... It's a long story. So he's leaving his father, who he admires, and his mother, who he loves, and his brother, who doesn't want to see him again. And his first thought is to go to a far country and stay with his uncle Laban. But he wants family. He wants a wife. So he's seeking home, seeking employment, seeking family. In our restless longing and pilgrimage, I think that we often, at least I do, we often will go through these periods of time, perhaps experience something in particular, where we'll believe about ourselves that we're not, as far as the spiritual quest is concerned, that we're not working at it hard enough, or maybe we're looking in all the wrong places. And this can be true sometimes. It can be. But is it possible that sometimes, when it comes to looking for the spiritual satisfaction, sometimes maybe we make it too complicated? Is it possible that we look too hard? It's when Jacob, in his darkness, stops and rests that he discovers the truth. He encounters God, and he encounters God in a very personal way. He receives a word of assurance. In his dream, he hears God saying, "Know that I am with you." Now, God isn't always this obvious. Some of you have had experiences with dreams. Some of you have had visionary experiences. Some of you probably feel that you've been shouting at the clouds and getting absolutely no satisfaction whatsoever, and you wonder if he even exists, or at least if God exists, he cares about you. Or you go through those long fallow periods, but then you have some marvelous but rare charismatic experience. So God isn't always as obvious as he was with Jacob. Mind you, the story of Jacob, it's not like this happens all that many times to Jacob either. Even his son, his 11th son later on in the story, his 11th son, Joseph, who is considered quite a dreamer. The account in the Bible only tells us about 2 of his dreams. I think it's 2. And then there are dreams of some other people that he interprets. So it wasn't every day with Jacob. And it certainly didn't happen in any place grand. This was not just a spiritual desert, but a literal desert. It had rocks. You had to sleep with a rock for a pillow, for crying out loud. "Surely the Lord is in this place," he said. "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." How many places have we been where the Lord is present and we did not know it? How many places have we been where the Lord is present and we did not know it? Look at that psalm, Psalm 139. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, surprise, you're there too. So Jacob calls the place Bethel, Bethel, literally the house of God. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Jacob sets up a stone monument. It's that very stone that he used as a pillar. Sets it upright, leaves it there in the middle of the desert. Now, there are temples which are in a place. There are also the temples which go with us when we go out from a place. St. Paul speaks of us as temples of the Holy Spirit, us collectively as a temple, each of us individually as temples. But here, Jacob says, "And this stone which I have set as a pillar shall be God's house." Who is Jacob to say that? All right, God, you can move in now. It's your house. Is Bethel God's house because Jacob willed it so? And is it because he named it? Is it because he poured oil on it? A temple is a temple because God is there and because the people of God are there, or the person of God is there, acknowledging God, whether God is seen in the moment or unseen. How awesome is this place? When on your pilgrimage, you find yourself in that place, it is awesome. If this place is that place for you often, and I'll tell you, with Sharon and me traveling quite a bit the past, 3 weeks or so, there have been times when we have really missed this place. It's become quite habit forming. You have. How awesome is this place? A temple, because God is there and the people of God are there. A rock marks for Jacob Bethel. For Moses, a burning bush for, give or take 15 minutes is Bethel. A gallery over a wine bar becomes Bethel. You are Bethel. Now, sermons typically will have some theological point to make, and then they're supposed to have a real practical application. And I'm going to completely fail you on that today. I just want us to contemplate who God is and what God is like, and just sit with that. Okay, so hold this story in your hearts and your minds. And consider this. We will not always see the ultimate realities. With Chopin on his journey, he had to say, "Oh God, I know you're there. I know you're there. You are there. But I sure don't see you. I don't understand how you're doing your job here." So yes, God chooses his times of self-disclosure. But here's what I want you to remember. Whatever one is experiencing at the moment, psychologically, materially, spiritually, as the Bible teaches it, the reality is the one which Jacob encountered, sleeping on a rock in the desert. For you, the angels of God are going up and down from the place where you are to the place where the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob